Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel General Hospital today. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The air in the visitation room of the Port Charles Maximum Security Prison was cold, sterile, and carried the faint, lingering scent of industrial-grade cleaner and despair. It was a smell Willow Corinthos had become all too familiar with over these past few weeks. A scent that clung to her clothes and her hair long after she'd returned to the relative comfort of her own home. But today was different. Today, the chill felt permanent, seeping into her bones, settling in the marrow with the grim finality of a judge's gavel. She sat on the hard, molded plastic chair, her hands folded neatly in her lap, a picture of forced composure. Across the scarred plexiglass partition, her husband, Michael Corinthos, mirrored her posture, his face a mask of anguish and fury. His knuckles were white where he gripped the edge of the counter, and his eyes, usually so full of light and love for her, were dark pools of helpless rage. "It's not fair," he whispered, his voice raspy from a night spent arguing with lawyers, pleading with anyone who would listen. "This is a travesty of justice, Willow. We're going to appeal. We're going to fight this until there's nothing left to fight with." Willow offered him a small, tremulous smile. It was the bravest expression she could muster. "I know you will, Michael. But for now, this is the reality." She glanced around the bleak room, her gaze skittering past the other visitors and inmates, all locked in their own private dramas of grief and farewell. "A year. It's a long time, but it's not a lifetime. We'll get through it. Wiley will get through it." Just saying her son's name was like a physical blow. A fresh wave of nausea rolled through her. A year of his childhood lost to her. A year of bedtime stories, first days of school, scraped knees and messy art projects. All experiences she would only hear about in recounted tales during these brief, supervised visits. The thought was a shard of glass in her heart. "He doesn't understand," Michael said, his voice cracking. "He just knows his mommy isn't home. We'll bring him to see you as often as they allow. Every single time." "It has to be enough," Willow said, more to herself than to him. She had to believe that. She had to build a fortress of hope around herself, or the sheer weight of the impending solitude would crush her. The charges, obstruction of justice, accessory after the fact in a corporate espionage scheme she'd been unwittingly tangled in, had been aggressively pursued by the district attorney's office. Her involvement had been minimal, born out of a moment of misguided loyalty, but the evidence, circumstantial as it was, had been damning. The jury hadn't believed her tearful testimony, and the judge had made an example of her. "Your mother is livid," Michael continued, trying to fill the silence with practicalities, with connections. "Carly is ready to burn the entire justice system to the ground. And Sonny, he's using every contact, every favor he's ever been owed. This isn't over, Willow. Not by a long shot." Willow nodded, appreciating the ferocity of her family's support. But in this sterile room, with the clock ticking down the final minutes before she was processed and led to a cell she would call her own, their power felt distant, abstract. Here, the only reality was the unyielding plexiglass and the uniformed guard standing watch with impassive faces. The heavy metal door to the visitor's side creaked open, and another figure stepped through. Willow's breath caught in her throat. It was Drew Kane. He looked older than the last time she'd seen him, the lines around his eyes more deeply etched, his shoulders set with a grim determination. He had been a rock throughout the entire ordeal, his own history with the legal system and personal loss making him a unique source of strength and understanding. He had testified on her behalf, spoken of her character, her devotion to her family. It hadn't been enough, but his presence now, in this final hour, meant everything. "Michael," Drew said, his voice a low, steady baritone. "Could I have a moment with Willow? Alone?" Michael looked from Drew to Willow, a flicker of surprise and hesitation in his eyes. He was protective, a lion guarding his wounded mate. But he also trusted Drew implicitly. He gave a tight nod, his hand pressing against the glass where Willow's was. "I love you," he mouthed, the words a silent promise. "Forever." "I love you too," she whispered back, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Michael stood, his chair scraping harshly against the concrete floor, and with a final lingering look, he walked out, leaving Drew to take his place. Drew sat down, his posture less rigid than Michael's, but his eyes held a different kind of intensity. They were filled with a profound, aching sympathy, but beneath that Willow detected something else. A flicker of urgency, of a terrible knowledge that needed to be shared. "You shouldn't have come," Willow said, her voice barely audible. "It's too hard saying goodbye." "There's no place I'd rather be," Drew replied, his gaze steady. "You're not saying goodbye, Willow. This is a pause. A damned inconvenient and unjust one, but a pause nonetheless." She managed another weak smile. "You always know what to say." "Not always," he said, a shadow crossing his face. "And what I have to say now, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to tell anyone." The gravity in his tone made her stomach clench. This wasn't just a pep talk. This was something else entirely. She leaned forward slightly, her forehead almost touching the cool glass. "What is it, Drew? Has something happened? Is it Wiley? Michael?" No, everyone is safe," he assured her quickly, but the reassurance did nothing to calm the sudden, frantic beating of her heart. He took a deep, ragged breath, as if steeling himself for a physical blow. "Willow, what they've done to you, this conviction, it's a nightmare. But before you go in there, before you have to face what's ahead, you need to know the truth. The whole truth. Because you deserve to have your armor, and the truth, no matter how painful, is the strongest armor there is." She stared at him, bewildered. "The truth about what? The case? Did you find new evidence?" "This isn't about the case," he said, his voice dropping so low she had to strain to hear him. The hum of the ventilation system seemed to grow louder, the room shrinking until it contained only the two of them, divided by the transparent barrier, yet connected by a thread of dreadful anticipation. "Then what?" she pressed, a sliver of fear, cold and sharp, piercing through the numb acceptance that had settled over her. Drew's jaw tightened. He looked like a man about to walk to his own execution. His eyes, usually so clear and direct, were clouded with a pain so deep it seemed to radiate from him. "I've been carrying this," he began, his words measured and heavy, "since the day I returned to Port Charles. It was a secret that wasn't mine to tell, but circumstances, they've changed everything. Keeping it now, while you're being led away to a cage for a crime that pales in comparison to the one committed against you, it would make me complicit." "Complicit in what?" Willow's voice was a trembling whisper. The world felt unsteady, the edges of her reality beginning to fray. What could possibly be worse than losing a year of her life with her husband and son? Drew leaned forward, his face close to the partition, his eyes locking with hers with an almost physical force. The air crackled with the weight of the unspoken. He was about to shatter her world, and he knew it. Every fiber of his being screamed against it, but his conscience, that unyielding moral compass that had defined him, left him no choice. He spoke 6 words. 6 simple monosyllabic words that, when strung together, formed a sentence of such catastrophic power that it felt like the prison walls themselves trembled. "Nina is not your real mother." For a moment there was only silence. It was not a quiet silence, but a roaring, deafening void that swallowed all sound, all thought, all feeling. The words hung in the air between them, nonsensical, impossible. They were not English. They were a foreign, hostile language that her brain refused to translate. Nina Reeves. Her mother. The woman who had given birth to her, who had been tragically separated from her for decades, whom she had only recently found and forged a fragile, often fraught relationship with. The woman whose DNA she shared, whose features she saw reflected in the mirror. Her mother. Not your real mother. The phrase unraveled in her mind. Not your real mother. Willow blinked, her head giving a tiny, involuntary shake. A faint, almost dismissive sound, a cross between a laugh and a sob, escaped her lips. "What? Drew, that's insane. What are you talking about?" "The tests. The DNA tests, we confirmed it." "The tests were manipulated," Drew said, his voice flat, devoid of all emotion now, as if he had to drain himself to deliver the killing blow. "The results were falsified." "By who?" she demanded, a spark of anger igniting in the cold confusion. "Who would do that? Why?" Drew's gaze never wavered. He was forcing her to walk to the edge of the precipice, making her look down into the abyss before he gave her the final push. "Think, Willow. Who had the most to gain from you believing Nina was your mother?" Who was desperate to keep you and Nina connected, no matter the cost? The answer arrived in her mind fully formed, a name whispered on a tide of pure, unadulterated horror. Carly. But that was impossible. That was madness. Carly Corinthos, her mother-in-law, her fiercest defender, the woman who had stood by her, fought for her, loved her like her own daughter. The woman who had clashed with Nina repeatedly, who despised her, who was desperate to keep you and Nina connected. The pieces, jagged and cruel, began to click into a picture so monstrous she could scarcely comprehend it. Carly's intense, almost obsessive interest in her relationship with Nina. Her constant warnings, her seemingly protective stance, had it all been a performance? A way to monitor the lie she had orchestrated? No, Willow breathed, the word a plea. No, Drew. Not Carly. She wouldn't. She couldn't. She did, Drew stated, the finality in his tone leaving no room for doubt. She arranged for the DNA test to be falsified. She made you believe that Nina, the woman she viewed as her enemy, was your biological mother. She did it to control the narrative, to keep you under her influence, and to use your connection to Nina as a weapon against her. The fortress of hope she had been so carefully constructing around her soul shattered. It didn't just crack. It exploded into a million razor-sharp fragments, each one tearing into her, eviscerating the very foundation of her identity. Everything was a lie. The profound, life-altering moment of finding her birth mother. A lie. The complicated, bittersweet bond she had been trying to build with Nina. A lie built on a false premise. The trust she had placed in Carly, the love she felt for the woman who was her son's grandmother. A lie poisoned at its root by an act of unimaginable betrayal. Her entire sense of self, the narrative of her life that she had come to accept and build upon, was nothing more than a house of cards built by a master manipulator. And it had just been blown away by 6 words. A dry, heaving gasp racked her body. She couldn't breathe. The sterile air was suddenly thick, suffocating. She pressed a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with a terror far greater than any she had felt about going to prison. Prison was a physical place. This was a spiritual annihilation. Why? She choked out, tears finally spilling over, hot and relentless. Why are you telling me this now? Why, when I'm about to walk in there? Why would you do this to me? The raw agony in her voice flayed him alive. Drew's own composure broke, his face contorting in shared pain. Because you can't go in there without knowing who your real enemies are, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Carly visits you. She writes to you. She will be your link to the outside world, to Michael and Wiley. And every time you see her face, hear her voice, you would be looking at the person who committed the ultimate violation against you. You would be living another lie, trapped in a different kind of prison. I couldn't let you do that. I couldn't let you serve a sentence for a minor crime, while the architect of your deepest pain plays the role of your savior. He was right. The understanding was a fresh wave of nausea. The thought of seeing Carly's face, of accepting her comfort, of listening to her promises to get her out, all while knowing the truth, it would have been a torture far more exquisite and prolonged than any the state could devise. My real mother, Willow stammered, the concept now a vast, terrifying unknown. Who? Her name was Harmony, Drew said softly, the name landing with a dull thud in Willow's memory. Harmony, the damaged, deceitful woman who had raised her, who had claimed to be her mother, who had put her through so much pain. She was your biological mother after all. The story she told you, as twisted as she was the truth in that one single regard. The irony was so brutal it was almost laughable. The woman she had reviled, pitied, and struggled to forgive had been her birth mother. The woman she had embraced as a long-lost miracle was a stranger. Her entire life had been a chessboard, and she had been a pawn moved by forces she never even knew were playing. All this time, Willow whispered, her mind reeling, flashing through 1,000 moments, 1,000 interactions with both Carly and Nina, now viewed through this new, horrifying lens. Carly's insistence that she keep her distance from Nina. Her fury when they grew closer. It wasn't protectiveness. It was control. It was the panic of a puppeteer whose strings were being threatened. And Nina, poor desperate Nina. She had believed the lie too. She had embraced a daughter who wasn't hers, poured all her pent-up maternal longing into a fiction. She was a victim in this as well, another piece on Carly's board. The shock began to recede, burned away by a rising incandescent fury. It was a hot, pure flame that thawed the icy dread in her veins. This anger was a lifeline. It was something to cling to, something to define the shapeless void of her betrayal. Knew what? Carly was shouting now, the fear turning to a kind of frantic rage. What is it? Is he blackmailing you? Is he threatening you? Tell me. But Joss just shook her head, backing away from the table, from her mother. I can't. I made a promise. I have to go. Jocelyn, don't you walk away from me. Carly commanded, but it was too late. Joss turned and fled from the penthouse, the door slamming shut behind her with a finality that felt like a physical blow. Carly stood alone in the sudden silence, the remains of their dinner sitting cold on the table. The rain continued to fall. She had confronted the truth, and the truth had run away from her. It was worse than she had imagined. The fear in Joss's eyes wasn't just the fear of being caught in a lie. It was the fear of something much, much bigger. Defeated and more terrified than ever, she did the only thing she could think to do. She called the one person Joss might not have run from. She called Dex. He arrived at the Metro Court 20 minutes later, his hair damp from the rain, his expression grim. He found Carly standing by the large windows, staring out at the glistening empty streets of Port Charles. She's at the apartment, he said without preamble. She's upset. Carly turned on him, all her fear and fury now directed at this young man who held her daughter's secrets and her heart. Upset? Dex, she's terrified. And so am I. It ends tonight. You will tell me everything. Right now. Who is Brennan? And what is his hold over you and my daughter? Dex looked down at his feet, his shoulders slumped. The loyal soldier was defeated. He knew the jig was up. Carly. No, she snapped, striding toward him. No more lies. No more evasions. You look me in the eye and you tell me the truth. Or so help me God, Dex, I will go to Sonny, and I will tell him everything. And you know what he will do. The threat hung in the air. They both knew what Sonny Corinthos was capable of when his family was threatened. Dex let out a long, weary breath, as if he'd been holding it for months. He finally looked up, and his eyes were filled with a profound and haunted resignation. It's not about a hold, he said, his voice low and ragged. It's about a deal. A bargain. A bargain for what? Carly demanded. He swallowed hard, the words clearly painful to form. For Sonny. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What about Sonny? Brennan, he's the one who gave me my orders, Dex confessed, the floodgates now open. When I first came to Port Charles, I wasn't just a random guy looking for work. I was sent here. By Brennan. Carly's mind reeled, trying to process this. Sent here? To do what? Dex met her gaze, his own filled with a terrible shame. To get close to Sonny. To gain his trust. To embed myself in his organization. And then to wait for the order. The order for what? Carly whispered, though a part of her already knew, already felt the icy hand of comprehension closing around her heart. To kill him, Dex said, the words simple, stark, and devastating. The air left Carly's lungs in a whoosh. She stumbled back, grabbing the back of a sofa for support. A hired killer. Sent to murder Sonny. And her daughter, her Jocelyn. And Joss, she managed to choke out. Where does she fit into this? Did you drag her into this? Did you use her to get closer to him? No, Dex said, the first sign of real passion in his voice. No, it wasn't like that. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to fall in love with her. She figured it out. She figured out who I was, what I was there to do. The pieces were starting to fall into place, forming a picture so horrifying it made her nauseous. So she knows? She's known all this time that you were sent here to assassinate her father. Yes, Dex admitted, the word heavy with guilt. And she made me a deal. A different deal. Carly stared at him, her mind racing, connecting the dots. Joss, her fierce, protective Joss, who loved Sonny with all her heart, despite his flaws, despite his world. She would do anything to protect him. She offered to help you, Carly said, the realization dawning with a blinding, terrible clarity. She found out, and instead of turning you in, she offered to help you get out of it. Dex nodded, his eyes glistening. She said we could find another way. She said we could find something on Brennan, something we could use against him to call off the hit. She said we could save Sonny and save me. Together. The truth, the full, unvarnished, monstrous truth, finally settled over Carly. It wasn't a secret affair or a foolish mistake. It was a conspiracy. A secret, desperate pact between her daughter and the man sent to murder her ex-husband, the father of her children. They weren't hiding a simple secret. They were hiding a plot to subvert an assassination. They were living every single day under the sword of Damocles, knowing that one wrong move, one slip-up, could result in Brennan giving the final order, or worse, sending someone else to finish the job Dex wouldn't do. All the late nights, the whispered conversations, the guarded phones, the constant, palpable strain. It was all to protect Sonny. Jocelyn had taken the most dangerous secret imaginable onto her young shoulders, and had chosen to carry it alone, with only Dex as her ally. She had chosen to walk into the lion's den to save her father, and she had hidden it from everyone, especially from the people who loved her most, to protect them, to keep them from being entangled in the deadly game. Carly sank onto the sofa, her legs no longer able to support her. The fight drained out of her, replaced by a wave of awe, of terror, and of a grief so profound it had no sound. Her baby girl. Her brave, stupid, magnificent girl. She had looked into the abyss of a professional killer and his target, and she had tried to build a bridge across it. All this time, Carly whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. All this time she's been carrying this unimaginable weight. And she didn't come to me. She didn't come to Sonny. She thought she had to do it alone. She thought it was the only way to keep everyone safe, Dex said quietly, sitting down opposite her. If Sonny knew, he would have gone after Brennan directly, started a war he might not win. If you knew, you would have told Sonny. She felt it was on her. Because she was the one who found out. Because she was the one who loved us both. Carly looked at Dex, truly looked at him. She saw the torment in his eyes, the love for her daughter, the self-loathing for his original mission. He was as trapped as Joss was, a pawn in a game he no longer wanted to play. Where is this now? Carly asked, her voice steadier, the mother and the strategist in her finally merging. What's the status? We're close, Dex said, a flicker of hope in his haunted eyes. We think we've found something. A transaction, a money trail, something that could link Brennan to an incident that would bring the full force of the WSB down on him. It's fragile, but it's something. Joss has been helping me analyze the data, cross-referencing. She's brilliant, Carly. Of course she was. Her daughter was brilliant and brave and in way over her head. This ends now, Carly stated, her tone leaving no room for argument. She stood up, a new cold purpose straightening her spine. The time for secrets was over. The time for action had begun.